If you're looking to buy an old home in this competitive market, here are 5 things that you should look out for when looking at an older home. Hi, I'm Rachel.person.
And I'm dolores.person, and we're person in person with William Raveis Real Estate in Newburyport, Mass. Good practice is always to bring somebody who knows old homes with you on the showing in the event you do have to waive your inspection. But here are 5 important things to look out for.
First one is
wiring. So people don't think about that much, but there's a number of different types of wiring. One of them is called knob and tube, and it is basically a white porcelain tube with a wire going through it that's coated in cloth.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that's first generation wiring. Now, when I first moved to Newburyport, you could insure a house with knob and tube, you could get a mortgage. That is no longer the case. The thing about the knob and tube wiring is there's not many people who know how to do it properly.
To remove it?
To remove it.
Yeah.
And it sometimes can be hidden. So part of what you might have to do is make some decisions.
Yeah.
If you have a sconce over a fireplace in an antique home, there's really no way to get new wiring to it. It's very difficult because you've got big frame beams that's going to preclude you from getting in that wall, and you've got masonry behind you. So in that case, you might have to just lose the sconces, cut them off at both ends, dead end them, and be done with them. Ceiling fixtures sometimes are hard to snake. As they say, the electricians, they snake the wires through. The major things, kitchens, baths, if it's been updated at all, they should have newer wiring. But word to the wise, watch for that knob and tube, and it can be hidden in the attic, it can be under insulation. Basements, look up and look around.
Yeah.
So that's number 1.
You don't want to get to the point where you've waived your inspection. Now the appraiser is looking at your house because you're getting a mortgage. They find the knob and tube and then you denied your mortgage. That's not a good position to be in, and you could be on the hook for your second deposit. Number 2 on our list, what is it?
Water in the basement. I'm always suspicious if I walk into a house, an older home, and I go in the basement and it is completely empty and the floor has been freshly painted. What are they hiding? They're probably hiding silt that was running. In other words, water comes in, it brings dirt, and you could see the dirt. What they do is they clean it and they try and make it look as good as possible. No fault on their part. It is a fault if they don't disclose it.
Correct.
Water is a really difficult thing to cure. You can do perimeter drains. There's all kinds of companies that guarantee it. You can't fool with Mother Nature, basically.
Yeah.
And if you've got underground streams like you have in Newburyport, going right through a house, you could be looking at some issues. You also probably won't be able to finish that basement or use it. But water is the enemy of homes.
Also, when you're looking in a basement, right? You have a way of telling if there's been water in the basement, right? And what is it?
Look at the timbers, basically. You know, you have a staircase and there's wood that comes down behind it.
Yep.
Now, if there's watermarks going up that, then at some point the water rose to that level.
Right.
I always look for that, and even if I think it's a dry basement, I look for it. And also, the nose knows. If you have, if your nose doesn't know, bring somebody that is allergic to mold into your basement, and they'll tell you.
Wait, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's still getting water, right?
Right. Well, one solution is open the windows, run a dehumidifier, get a permanent dehumidifier. You can plumb it so it goes into a drain.
Oh, nice.
And that way you're constantly having clean, fresh air going in there, and it's pulling the water out of the air.
Number 3, sills. What are sills, and why is that something you should be concerned about?
Well, there's 2 different kinds of sills.
Yeah. Windowsills?
Windowsills, right. Windowsills, right. Sill is basically the base plate around the house. You dig a hole, you have a concrete floor, you have stone or masonry walls, and then you have a big, heavy piece of wood that goes around the edges. It's what everything sits on
top of.
In Newburyport, you might find one that has been changed, married, repaired. There's right and wrong ways to do that. We have what's called powder post beetles in Newburyport, which is old beetle damage. It's not live, it's fine. If it's eaten away a lot of the post and it hasn't been replaced with new wood, you might have a problem. So what the inspectors do, and again you can do, is look around the edges
in the basement
and look for that. The other thing you want to look for with your structure, when you have a beam that runs across the house, that it goes somewhere and ties in. You'll have a big beam and then it comes down to a little bit narrower Some of them, though, come down to about that much. Well, you're not getting any structure from that.
Yeah.
It should lock in, the beam should lock into another beam. So structure is really important. It's dirty work. It's expensive work. It's hard to get people to do. It is not always as expensive as you think, but if it's really bad, you might have to jack the house up. Really important that you check out the structure.
So number 4, everyone's favorite, asbestos.
Asbestos. So what's asbestos?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what it is first.
Yeah,
So
right.
asbestos is a material that was used very extensively in the early 1900s through probably the 1960s. Typically, you'll find it in older homes. There's a number of ways you can find asbestos. Sometimes it is a siding. Look at some homes. If you've got a trained eye, you can see it. They usually have a little bit of waviness to them, like they're striated. They're basically concrete encased asbestos siding. Those are not that scary because they're on the outside of the house.
Right,
But-
and you're not breathing anything in.
Right. They're not what's called friable, which means they don't come apart when you
Okay.
touch them.
You still want to get rid of those eventually, though, I would
Eventually you do,
assume.
and again,
Yeah.
expensive to get rid of. The other type of asbestos there is, which you see in schools and public buildings, is flooring. They used to make vinyl flooring with asbestos in it. That is, again, not that friable because it breaks, it's brittle and it breaks in pieces. So you don't get that much in air, but in buildings like the Brown School or the Kelly School, these old buildings that have been renovated or need to be renovated, you'll see a lot of wall, floor, ceiling tiles that have asbestos. The other kind of asbestos is in your basement, asbestos pipe wrap. And it looks like plaster. And if you see the ends, it's usually flaking. It's usually around heating pipes. And what will happen is if it's disturbed, it goes into the air. Then you have to have an air count done, and then you have a problem. So if you have a 1940s boiler in a house, it might have asbestos. You also might have residual asbestos on pipes. I've seen asbestos in basements where they're wrapped in, and it's called encapsulating. And that's perfectly acceptable use to limit the exposure. That's a judgment call on your part. Do you want to live with asbestos? At this point, it's wrapped.
Yeah, we see that quite a lot.
Yeah. Part of the problem with removing asbestos is that, this is going to sound crazy, but it goes with your estate. So if you remove asbestos from a house, unless you get a qualified person that's willing to take it over and own it, you are responsible for it for perpetuity. Other thing about asbestos is it might be in what looks like loose insulation. So when they were making this type of insulation it looks like vermiculite, and this would have called rock wool, so it would be cloth, pieces of gray cloth with little bits of white and gray and flecks of mica, mica the stone. There were a number of sources for asbestos and rock wool insulation. It's a loose insulation. Some of it came from a factory that used asbestos and some of it did not. And the only way to find out if you have perfectly good insulation or insulation with asbestos, and your inspector will note it, take it and have it sent out to a lab and tested. We lived in a house and we were told we had asbestos in the insulation in the attic of Fruit Street, and we had it tested and it was not asbestos. I sold the house again a couple of times, and every time they had an inspection they said there's asbestos
in the
and
attic.
say no, I had it tested. You should have your own test done.
Yeah.
That is another place you find asbestos. It's not as hazardous because obviously it's not in your living space and it's not as difficult to get rid of. The asbestos pipes are the one that it is a cancer causing. It actually, the fibers
get into your lungs, right?
They get into your lungs,
Yeah.
and if you saw them under a microscope, they have a little, what looks like a fish hook on the end of the fiber, and they embed in your lungs, and it can be years before they.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, really important to know that asbestos is not something that it's not your friend.
All right, so the last one, which is not something that people think about a lot, is whether or not there are open permits on an older house. First of all, what is an open permit? Why do I care?
So let's say you go to get a permit and you're going to do your kitchen over. The permit has a permit card, and on it there's a number of signatures.
That goes in your window?
Yep.
Okay.
You can see those? And it has a number of signatures that have to be gotten. The first one is the demolition, and they come over and make sure the demolition is done right, and the building inspector for the municipality signs off on that. Then they have rough framing. Then they do a sign off for electrical and plumbing. And then the whole thing's closed in, and they're supposed to have a final walkthrough and a final sign off. If that final sign off is not done, you have an open permit. Some homeowner decides they want to do the work themselves, they may not even get a permit.
And your agent can also do that for you too,
Absolutely.
right? Do a search with the town to make sure that there's no open permits.
If you look at MIMAP Newburyport, it'll give you a site You can look up the lot, and then on the left side, there's pull-down menus. It's not the most user-friendly site, so you might ask your agent to do it for you, but it has permits, and you can click on it, and it has a number of dots. Planning board, deed restrictions. They're not all there, but the things that are there are permits. And if it says permit, it tells you what year and whether it's open or closed.
Yeah.
Now, what they can do is, if no permit was pulled, they can ask you to rip it all out and put it back in again. Really bad. That happened to one house that I know of on Lime Street. So the buyers called the city. The city came down and busted the sellers and made them rip the bathroom out and put a brand new one in exactly like what they just ripped out.
But this time with a permit.
Before the closing.
Yeah.
So permits, another really important thing to look for in terms of things that could be real snafus for you when you buy a house.
All right, that is it. 5 things to look out for when you're buying an older home. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and click to subscribe. There is plenty more historic content coming, as well as tons of real estate content. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Thanks.